In terms of the starting of the whole interview, simply if you could just tell us your name, age, wife, kids, pets, situation, and we'll kick it off from there.
Oh wow, that's a hard one to even work out that. All right, so hi, I'm Anthony Cook, but everybody knows me as Cookie. Typical race car drivers, our nicknames aren't very smart. It's just part of what our names are normally. Tony Delberto's TD and stuff like that. So it's not that smart. What was it? I'm 54. I look about 16. I understand that, but 54. I'm married. Been happily married to the same lovely wife now for just over 30 years. So we got married very early. Two wonderful boys, 23 and 25, and no pets at this point in time. Looking at getting another dog. Our last golden retriever, she passed away probably about 4 or 5 years ago. We had her for about, she's about 13 and a half. So really it's been, like any of you guys that have pets or pet owners, when you don't have them around, there is a big hole in your heart, or there's a big hole in your life. So we're looking at getting another one, but there will be a dog. So we have no pets, no goldfish, no nothing. At our last place or two ago, we had 5 goats, we had fish, we had peacocks, we had wild, but we had animals galore, but not at the moment.
And Cookie, can you tell us where you grew up? So give us a bit of backstory on where you grew up.
Yeah, okay. Well, we were pretty nomadic as a family when we were younger. I'm born in Sydney and lived in there till I was 7. And then my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and they gave him 9 months to live when I was 2. Still alive today, so he's still kicking goals. So he beat the cancer at that point in time, and he decided to travel. So from when I was 7, then we went to Queensland. We lived in Toowoomba, not far from where Jimmy Mann actually lives in Toowoomba. We went and saw him while we were up there, another one of our great instructors. And so then went to Toowoomba, to Brisbane, lived in Perth for a few years. And when we came back, I came back to Melbourne when I was about 12. Or grade 6 anyway. I came back into grade 6 or whatever that is. 11, 12. And I've been in Melbourne, so I consider myself a Melbourne boy. So we're lived in Melbourne for most of my life, and I love it. When we came back from Western Australia, we moved into Glen Waverley. So Glen Waverley was majority of my home. I left there when so we lived in Glen Waverley all the time in Melbourne. And then when I got engaged to Jules, we actually bought a house in Greensborough. So after that, Jules and we moved to Greensborough and have lived sort of in the northern side of Melbourne area. So I lived in Greensborough, then Diamond Creek, out to Research and Eltham. Now we live in Macrae on the beautiful Mornington Peninsula.
And tell us what your first car was back in the day.
People don't. I try to hide this. I don't like telling it, but my first car was a Renault 16, a chocolate brown Renault 16 automatic. My dad is a fan of Renaults, and he's had a number of Renaults through his life, and he's still got one now, a Renault Koleos, the new one, which is a great car, by the way. But my first car and I was so disappointed in it. I had to get it because one of Dad's mates that he worked with, his wife, he was selling this car, and Dad said, "You got to buy this car. This is the best car ever. It'll be really good." So I relented and I bought it. It was a great car. It was good, but I hated it because it was an old man's car. It wasn't what I wanted. So I used to actually, when I went to trade school, I used to go to Dandy TAFE, and so I used to park the car around the street and miles away from the TAFE and walk to school because I hated it so much. And then all the kids were going, the other tradies are going, "What's going on? It's fucking there." So one day they followed me. I left something out in the car to go get my lunch or something. So they followed me and they caught me in this car. And they said, "What is this piece of shit?" So they gave me, because they've all got these Tiranas and Holden, HQs and all these tough Falcons and shit like that. And here I've got a bloody Renault 16. And wasn't long after that, once they bagged the shit out of me, I sold it. And I got a much better, I bought a Ford Escort gear. And that was cool. It had mags on it. I only bought it because it was yellow and it had mags. It was great.
Was that a Mark 1 or Mark 2 Escort?
Mark 2. So it was the hatchback type. It wasn't the Mark 2. So yeah, 79 I think it was. 79. And so it had the gear. So it was the top of the range one. Had to get the good one. And I put a little spoiler on the front and nothing. It was a good car.
Was the Renault a manual or auto?
No, it was an auto, which made it even worse.
Pooh Brown auto.
I tell you, it was
had the three wheel nuts. Is that one of those that had the 3 wheel nuts?
The Renault 16. No, I think it had 4.
Okay.
But it was the bigger version. It was like a family sedan, and it had the slopey back on it. So It was, it looked like a big version of a Mazda 6 or something that they've got now. You know, like all the old one, Mazda 626. Remember we had the 626s?
Yep.
And had the big curvy back. So it was a family truckster, and it had a body roll on it. I reckon Marquez could have driven inside it when I was just going around the normal corner. It rolled so much body roll. It was horrendous. It was a shit car.
Who actually taught you to drive when you're on your L's?
I was the type of guy that when I could get my learners at 17, we only had to have our learners for 3 months when we were young at my age, when I was 18. Or 17 it was, you could get them at 17. So I got my learners on my birthday when I was 17. I had to get my license because I was driving, when I was young, I was just driving from, I think I used to get in the car at 10. I worked out that if I washed the car, Dad would let me back it down the driveway and onto the grass. And I could wash it. So that was my first being able to drive. So I used to wash that car like 2 or 3 times a week. It was the cleanest cars Mum and Dad ever had because I could just. And then where we lived in Glen Waverley, there was a doctor's surgery across the road. It had a massive car park. So as the days went on, weeks went on, what I would do is I'd back the car out of the driveway and then I'd park it on the street. And then I'd wash it out on the street because it was better and didn't want to get the grass all wet and all this sort of shit. So that was my excuse to Mum and Dad, and they didn't care. And as it went on, I progressively went down the street, up into the doctor's surgery, did about 8 laps around the doctor's surgery car park and came back down. So every time I washed the car, I think the car put on about 10 kilometres every time I was washing the car. So I learned how to drive a manual, and they were column shifts and all sorts of different cars that we had just from an early age. Because my old man used to race cars with Freddie Gibson and Colin Bond and all those sort of guys early on. So he was into racing cars. So it was just in my blood. I just liked driving cars. And when I got to answer your question, when I got to do my driving learners, I got my learners on my 17th birthday, and both Mum and Dad would be both the teachers. But it was more, not so much teaching you how to drive the car, it was more road placements and what to do. It was different times back in those days. It was so much easier. You didn't even have to wear rear seatbelts back when it wasn't that critical. So I used to drive to school. So when I was 17, I used to drive to school. So Mum would be teaching me then, and I'd be driving home. And then on weekends, if I was umpiring footy or whatever I was doing, whoever took me to those games, so both Mum and Dad. So I had my license, my learners from 17. So I had 12 months instead of the 3 months that they had to by law.
Yeah, very similar to myself.
Long-winded answer.
No, well, that's the beauty of this whole thing. There's no right or wrong, and we love the long-winded ones.
I remember when I was probably 15 or 16, I'd get in the car, and to help dry it, my answer was, Mum said, well, how can you drive the car around the block? And it was not a huge block, but it was probably maybe a kilometre. Maybe a kilometre along the block. And it was in the back suburbia, so it wasn't anything. There was no main streets. But I said, oh, that was just to help dry it off a bit. It made it help. It's just bullshit that I could do was just do a couple laps around the street because I just wanted to drive the car.
Get the air to blow dry it.
Blow dry it. That's exactly right.
And so what about motor racing? You touched on it there. You said your old man had been around the motor racing world, but how about yourself? How did you get involved in racing back in the day?
I started off when we had our own business. Let's say we had the electromotive business, and I had about $4,000 in my pocket. I'd saved up some money. I don't know how, it was about $4,000. And back in those days, I'd always wanted to race cars. And Dad, after him being in the motorsport, we couldn't afford it, and he kept sort of putting it off because he knew how much it would cost and all the rest of it. We didn't have any money. We invested everything. They'd invested everything in this business and stuff. So I had this $4,000, and I said, I want to buy a car, and I want to go start racing. I wanted to start to do sprint events or hill climbs or whatever I could do with this car or form the racing. So I bought, again, Dad talked me into buying a Triumph because he was into Triumphs as well as Renault. So two pieces of shit cars, but ended up buying a bloody Triumph TR7, which is a 4-cylinder, but I converted it into a V8, so I called it a TR8. It technically wasn't a TR8, but so it was a Triumph, TR7.8, and so we bought that. Then my brother said, "Oh, look, I'll come in with you." Sorry, yeah.
How old were you then?
I was married, so I must have been about 25, 20. Yeah, I remember the first number I had on my car was at 30, and that was to do with my age. When I started a race, I thought I just picked a number, and it was one of the numbers, and it was 30. So I must have been just before. It took me a few years to get that number when I started racing, state racing and stuff. So I reckon it was probably about 25, 26. I started to do this, and we built this. The car had, we fixed the engine up a bit, and we put some new tyres on it, and went out and had heaps of power because it had a V8 in this small little car. And we took it out to Winton, and the first time we took it around the track, my brother wanted to come on board then, and so he put some money in too, and we started to do it as a bit of a joint venture, and Dad got involved. So it was a bit of a family thing we did together, and we went out to Winton, and I had the first session, and then my brother went out and had his first session, and it threw a leg right out the block. The block just went boom. So we had one track day at Winton, and it shit itself. And we started on the build program.
Was that you?
My brother was driving it.
Oh, yeah.
Nah, I don't blow up cars, mate. My brother, he's not a race car driver. He blew it up. So, so yeah, it was. He said that it was my fault because I thrashed it the first session, but I said, nah, it was good when I left it. But who knows? But it was the start then of the gazillion dollars that we put into building this bloody car. It was a good car at the end, but Jesus, we spent some money on that piece of shit. Like what happens when you do a car, we had massive horsepower, and then you had to fix the gearbox up, and then the diff, and then there's, okay, now we're going fast, we can't stop the thing, so we've got to put brakes on it, and then it just, then we need tyres, and it just never, and a Triumph TR7 isn't like a Porsche, or it isn't like a race car. It is a road car that you are trying to make into a race car. So everything had to be built, everything had to be manufactured, and it cost a fortune, and trial and error. I'd never, ever, ever do it again. It was a great experience. I knew every nut and bolt in that car. I could pull the gearbox out in half an hour, and when we were racing it, we kept it together with bloody cable ties, and you never know. I never knew that you could keep an exhaust together with cable ties, but you can. At Phillip Island, I did 8 laps with the exhaust held on with the cable tie. So there you go. But there's so much. I would never ever do it again.
Cable ties and race tape. I do it all.
Cable tie, race tape, and chicken wire.
So just a quick overview then of your racing experience. You mentioned the TR7 8/8, And did you just start off with club sprints, or did you get straight into state racing? And what sort of level of racing did you do?
Yeah, it took us. We ended up joining obviously the Triumph Car Club, and just became doing just club stuff. So we were doing all like hill climbs and sprint events. So yeah, just 3-lap shootouts and stuff like that, like time attack that they're doing nowadays. But it was called just sprint events those days. And yeah, my brother and I, again, we competed in a couple of years. Actually, it ended up quite a ugly exit from the Triumph Car Club, because we built this car and it was known as the Cookie Monster, and it was an absolute weapon in the club, and it smashed every lap, every club record. Like I was faster. I think we had 9 or 10 events. I think I won 8 of them. My brother won the other 2 or something. So between the 2 of us, we won every event in the club. And the club guys that we were racing against, who had been these old badge-wearing, cap-wearing old farts that had been doing it for years, they weren't happy with these 2 young guys coming in and developing a car that they'd never seen before. And they thought it was fantastic until we smoked them. And then when we smoked them, they put every handbrake, they did everything for us to stop us. So they actually said the last year that we won the club championship and won everything, they said, we're changing the rules and you can't compete. So they basically made it so hard for us that they ended up kicking us out. So, and I said, look, I'm not interested in hanging around and being part of this bunch of dickheads. All we're winning is certificates and glass goblets. You know, it's not like we're winning $1 million. So I left there and we started racing under the PIAC banner. So Phillip Island Automobile Racing Club. So, and they were great. They just welcomed us. They didn't care what car we drove. So I just did sprint events from that with those guys, did a lot of that, and then kept developing the car and started doing my state racing from probably when I was early 90s, I think it was. So I was about 32, 33, I think I was, around the early 90s. That's the math, I can't remember. But yeah, we started doing state racing then. And I ran there for about 5 years doing state racing.
Did that run in sports cars or sports sedans?
Yeah, Smart Sports. So we were racing against people like Lenny Catlin had a amazing Cobra, AC Cobra. We're running against Mark Cheney, so he's still running now with the Porsches. So we was running his GT3 or something GT2, GT3 Porsches. It was really hard because I'm running a 1979 model bloody Triumph TR8 with other old MGs and Triumphs and stuff, but then we're racing against these modern day cars. It was really hard to compete with them, but I was doing all right. Yeah, just having a lot of fun learning the craft, learning the hardest part or the fun part wasn't actually winning or getting up near the front. It was actually dueling and having, close races at Sandown. I remember one time we were at Sandown and I think I qualified. I was about 10th or something, and I was pretty quick at the start, and the car got slower as we couldn't keep up with the fast ones, but I could start very well. And Paul Stokell was out there running his bloody Diablo and it was just a trial. He was just using the state race as a bit of a trial for one of his races. And he said, I'm going to start up the back. I'm not going to stuff you guys around. You're running a championship. Don't worry about me. I'll get out of your way. And as soon as the helmet comes on, all that bullshit goes away. And he turns around and goes, and I remember I started so well, and I've gone from 10th and I'm up to about 4th or 5th up to turn 1 at Sandown. And Stokell passes me on the inside. So he's come from last, 25th or 30th. We had a big grid. Mind you, there's a lot of 4 cylinders and 6 cylinders behind there. And this Diablo, this yellow Diablo that he was racing it was a weapon. And he's passed me on the inside of turn 1. And I've gone so close to him into turn 2, I've outbraked myself. And it was lucky that the back of Diablo was like that and the front of my car was like that. I parked my car up turn 1 like that, and right where the camera was, and I was talking to Stokell afterwards because he don't have a rearview mirror, they have a camera that looks out of the back of the car. He said to me, "Your eyes, Cookie, I saw your eyes, they were all like that." I was so close to the back of his car, I thought I was going to just run into him, but anyway, he didn't, and it was, he just took off and smoked us all, but yeah, so it took a while to get the car to develop and run in the state series for about, I think did it for about 5 or 6 years.
And then there's quite a bit of a time between the end of that racing experience and when you got into driver training, isn't there? And just let us know, how did it come about that you got into driver training?
Well, there's a whole lot of story in between there and then. Once with the racing car, I spent a lot of money. I got a mechanic. We wanted to get obviously further and further. We're getting better and better in the actual racing itself, and got getting closer up the front of the field. And like anything, everybody was your mate when you're down 10th, 15th, and 20th in the grid. Even the front guys are all your mates. They're all helping you out. As closer you get to the front to them, they don't want to hear you anymore. They're not talking to you. They're talking about you. They're telling the stewards that this isn't right, and Cookie's got his wing not adjusted right, so they're all down there and they go, yeah, no, it is fine, and just all that bullshit. But I had all the engine done up. I spent, I'm not going to tell you how much I spent because my missus will see this and she still doesn't know how much money I spent on that car. And so I had the engine all beautiful, and I was down at Phillip Island on the Friday doing a practice for a state round that we had on the Saturday and Sunday, and I was hooking it up. We were fanging around on the Friday. It was going great. I said, this is beautiful, we're in. And went qualify on Saturday morning, and Mark, there was another guy, Perry, who also was running a GT3, a yellow one.
Very
Mark
specific.
had a red one at that time. Yeah, Jerry, that's it, yep. And I was catching him. We were qualifying, and I was catching him, and I'm going, you beauty, this is going to be the best ever. And I was right on it. And I even said to myself as we're coming up over around Hayshed and over Luton Heights, this car, I've never held it. It was pulling like it never, pulling like a 15-year-old. It was fantastic. And we're going over the top of the, coming onto the straight at turn 12 there at Phillip Island. I grabbed, fourth gear, whatever it was. And next minute, bang, the engine just lit. I thought it was on fire because it was actually being steam, but I couldn't see everything. The windshield was all covered in vapours and smoke, and I thought I was on fire. I pulled over onto the right-hand side of the track and stopped where the fire marshals were. It wasn't on fire, it was just, the engine just went bang, so it was just steam and water. But I was spewing because I was catching Perry. Perry on that lap, he got pole for the race. If it had blown up just over the start-finish line, or turn 1 or turn 2, I would have got pole that day. And that would have been my best ever result, but it didn't happen. So after that, my missus came to me and she said, well, I know you just spent a bucket load of money on this car. You could spend another bucket load of money on this car that you enjoy and you get the most out of it, or we could put that money and we could buy a boat that the whole family could use and we could all get out of, something out of it. So guess what I did? I bought a boat. So that's why I'm still married.
That's the right decision.
So we bought a boat. Yeah, right decision. So I got out of all motor racing at that time and I concentrated on my business. Business was getting pretty big and we're doing really well. Then I got back into motorbikes. I bought motorbikes and started riding bikes. I bought Sean Giles' old G6R 1000, his superbike, and started doing track days and that on that. And then I was doing a little bit of private tutoring and just helping out Steve Brogy on some days. We used to do a lot of work with Steve Brogy down there at Phillip Island on the superbike school. Did all his courses and they were fantastic. It was the best thing I ever did, was doing that. So I had a bit of a taste for just some individual coaching. Didn't do it officially through him. He would just help me, like one-on-one. A couple of guys would come up, or remember Steve asked me, there was some international guys came over from Ireland or England or something, and they said, can I look after them for the day? And it was something that I wouldn't mind doing, getting into it. Then I had a big motorcycle crash, and that put paid to that. So I was out of the instructing, out of riding, out of everything for 10 years because I couldn't walk properly for a while. And then I just focused on business. And then, so when I sold my business 2013, that's when I got back into instructing in the big way, because I had time to devote to it. I tried it I'd worked with Lincoln for Merck on one or two occasions, just because Lincoln Burns, as we know, is right into the Mercedes driving academy and stuff, and he got me into doing a little bit of that because we're just mates. There was only a few events, nothing particular. But when I sold my business back in 2013, I got in touch with him again, and he said, yeah, come on board so I could focus it. And so really my instructing days have grown exponentially, meeting people like yourself and getting on board with Evolve and things like that, and Jaguar and all these other ones since 2013. So about 7 years now.
And out of that driver training experience in the modern times, I'd call it, I suppose, what are have you got some stories to tell out of that and some of the experiences you've had that have been memorable through that driver training?
Yeah, well, there's heaps. Every time we go out on an event, there's things that we learn or we have some experiences. Big things is like I do the driver training because I'm not into it from a brand perspective. Like I don't really care about, when we do, we all work for multiple brands and they're fantastic. But what I like doing, what I've worked out with coaching is that I enjoy teaching people, and you get to meet so many different people in so many different walks of life that there's some of the experiences you get when you have somebody. When we were at Evolve, one of the first Bathurst one we did a couple of years ago, and I was instructing a young lady, and she had a Commodore, and we were going around the track, and she was very nervous because she'd only really done hill climbs, and she'd only ever been up from turn one. It is after turn one, they go up and then up, right up the top, up through the cutting and finish on top of the hill. And she hadn't really done a whole lap before, and she was very nervous. And as the day progresses, we got her to go from really very tentative to being a full-on. She was giving it a good crack at the end of the day. And when they come to you at the end of the day and they're crying and they're hugging you and stuff like that and saying it was the best experience of their life, that's some of the stories that I like. And there's heaps of those ones where you can really make a connection with somebody. Like Sid at the moment, Sid Tass and I are having a great relationship, and we're developing his race. And look, some people you click with and some people you don't. You see that on supercars, you see that the engineers don't work well with the driver, but you and I could teach the same person and they hear the different things from each of us differently. So, but there's heaps of different stories from when one of the guys that they have brain fades and they're coming into turn 2 full noise at Phillip Island, and you're going brake, and every instructor will be telling you this, harder push, stops, and they don't. They've got this. There's an old guy this particular time, and he had a helmet on, luckily, because I ended up having to belt him. And they just get into this, and you see some of the footage, instead of putting their foot on the brake, they still got it full on the accelerator, and they're confused, and they're thinking that they've actually got their foot on the brake, but in fact they're not, they're going faster. And so you've got to snap them out of that stupor that they're in, and I find the quickest way is by punching them. It doesn't work any other way. So grab the wheel, elbow him in the side of the head, and then, and we ended up saving the day there. But, and they say that you as an instructor, we should know that they're going to be in trouble before they're actually in trouble, and often we do know that, but when we get in trouble is that we're expecting them to probably get, well, I find it weird when I was first doing it, is when people, you're saying brake, you think it's simple, stop, push harder, whatever you do, and they're not doing it. You think, they'll do it in a minute. They're going to put it in and say, oh, fuck, by the time you grab the wheel, it's too late. So I've learned from that you don't assume that these people know what they're talking about. So I get on the wheel way earlier now. And sometimes there was a young kid that we had at Sandown, and he was beating his chest. He wanted to show everybody how good, or show me how good he was. And he wouldn't let me do that first lap to show him where he'd never been to Sandown before. He's a little BMW, comes out of pit lane, plucking gears. And I said to him probably about 300 before the brake marker. I knew he wasn't going to brake. And I've gone, I looked over and I said, we're off here into turn one. And I said, we're off, we're into the kick leader, here we go. And I let him have it. I just let him have the off because I knew we were going to do it because it's a safe environment. There's a run off there. So yeah, I grabbed the wheel and slowly got it back. And we pulled over after we spun around. I lost the thing and I turned around and I just said to him, are you fucking stupid? Or are your ears painted on? Or do you have a learning disability? I need to know one of those is your problem because you didn't brake and you didn't listen to me, you didn't do anything. So what is it? And he just turns around and goes, I'm just stupid. So from then on, he listened and he was great. So sometimes you just gotta I think, in a safe way, some of these people, let them have a little bit of a off or an issue or a drama. Because you can say, oh, you're going to crash, you're going to spin it. Until that, yeah, I'm not. But until they actually get really close to having that, oh, fuck moment, it was the quickest learning experience he ever had in his life. And at the end of the day, I praised him because he listened to me from that point onwards and his learning went straight up. He was fantastic. And he's only young, he's a green P plater, driving a little BMW 318 or something like that. And at the end of the day, he had a great, and he came up afterwards and said, look, I really appreciate you giving me a slapper to start off with because it made me realise that I was a dickhead and had a great day. So there's a couple of stories. I can understand why some of the other boys go for about 8 hours talking about this because they would have so many stories. And as I'm talking to you, there's many, but that's enough, I think.
Yeah. And it's a very common theme, though, that reason we do what we do is because we do enjoy that outcome, that benefit that people get at the end of the day, that reward of seeing them improve and take something away from it. It's amazing how common that is between the team. That's why we do what we do and why we're willing to sit next to people that may not be listening and what have you. Have you coached anyone famous? Have you sat next to anyone famous?
No. Next question. We've obviously been with famous people and around a lot of famous people like Mick Fanning and Adam Gilchrist and Mick Doohan, and there's been heaps of people that we've met. But no, I've never actually instructed anybody. A good one that I did, but I didn't know he was. We had a Mercedes day up at Bathurst. You were there too with that snow week that we were up at Bathurst, and I didn't know at the time, but his name was Simon, and he was one of the managers of Mercedes. So he was there as a part of Mercedes, and I coached him. And and there was another guy too on that time. He was a reporter, and I didn't know he was a reporter. And both of them sent Jerry. So Jerry's the boss of Mercedes here in Australia, and they sent him an email to say how wonderful experiences they had and how I was a great coach and blah blah blah, and pumped my tires up pretty much, which was fantastic. And he sent that to Hackett, and then Hackett forwarded it to me. So I had some really good. And I've met both of those people again afterwards, and we've had this little bit of a click now. Like there's, that particular experience gave us an instant friendship, which has been really amazing. And that's what I noticed with a few of our customers at Evolve Drive, that when you get to see them, and we do, I can name many people, or I can think of heaps of people that we've now become quite friendly with, and it's just from the coaching experience that we have it gives you this bond, and the bond comes very quickly, and it's very intense. And I don't know whether it's because we are in such an intense environment, and they put their trust in you to help them on these really high speed. You're in some of these Porsches and stuff, and we're doing 260s and stuff like that down Phillip Island or around 240s, 250s up the back straight of Sandown, and you're getting them to push into the corner a bit deeper as you're coaching them, and they're starting to break, and they trust you, and you build that trust up. So that bond becomes, I don't know, it's hard. I've met many people in my life that we've become friendly with through work and through association play. On the track, those people, and you might not even see them on a social aspect or anything else, but when we're at those days, it's like a brotherhood. We become I know when Sid and Pete and all these other guys come back, DJ and everybody with all these other guys and girls that we have come, and you coach with them, you just have each other's back. It's great. I love that. I love driving, but I love driving well. Anybody can drive. Doesn't matter whether I'm driving a bus, whether I'm driving a truck, a car, a motorbike, houseboat, whatever it is. I like driving and doing it well, doing it perfectly as I can. And that's whether I'm backing a bus into a parking bay or something, and I always put a little challenge that I want to get within this much of the certain spot. So, and I think that's why I like coaching, driver coaching, because I like teaching people how to do it well. Most people know how to drive. We all know how to drive because we don't drive very well. So, yeah. So again, to answer your question, I haven't done many people who are famous.
That's a pretty good answer, and again, goes off on a bit of a tangent, but that's perfect. Tell me, out of all that driver training experience, there's got to be some funny stories or some fails in there. You did touch on a couple earlier on, but I'm sure there's a few others there.
Yeah, the biggest fail and probably the biggest regret, and maybe even the biggest definitely the biggest learning experience I had in my driver training was early on. I hadn't been doing it long, and again, it was at Bathurst with Mercedes. And I was in a group where we were coaching the little A45s and CLA 45s, so it was all AMG vehicles, so they're high performance stuff. And we're on the top of the hill, so we started at Skyline, and we were doing through the S's down the Dipper and turning, and Forest Elbow was where, at the end, exit of Forest Elbow was where this particular exercise finished. We were coaching 2 people each, and I think there was probably 8 vehicles or something like that, so the rotations around. So we had and the driver, so we went down first and showed them, and they're all, you know what it's like, there's all witches hats and you've got to go in between, so Forest Elbow was the last corner. We had witches hats there, so we've got gates we've got to go through, and it was coaching them how to do that important section of the track, so when they're doing lapping later on in the day, that they get to know these certain sections. And there was other ones where they're going up the hill and all this sort of stuff. So ours was this one. Now, this one particular gentleman, he's driven down. They get 3 goes down, and then they come back up the track. And or was it 6 goes? Anyway, they had a number of times. Let's say 3 or 4 goes down, 3 or 4 goes back up again. Then they swap over, and the other driver gets a crack at it, and he becomes the passenger. So this person, he's been up and down this course 12 times. He's been in with the other guy, and then it was lunchtime. So we're doing our rotation. It was the last one before lunch. And we're going down. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. We've got the other guy in the back, and I'm sort of turning a bit sideways to talk to both the guys at the same time. And we're just driving down through this exercise quite slowly. And as I'm talking to the guy, we're just sort of saying, now later on when you do so I was coaching a bit to do what they expect after lunch. Now, when you come through here, take your time, because now you've got to hook it all up and blah, blah. And this dickhead decides, as he gets to Forest Elbows, he's coming down just before, there's a kink, the right-hand kink just before, and then it dips down there at Forest Elbow. He puts his foot down, starts to go fast, and I'm going, slow down. So we're actually doing just a transfer stage. We're not doing the exercise. It was just rolling through. He goes flat out. For some reason, he wanted to go around this corner flat out. I'm going, what the hell are you doing? Slow down. What are you doing? And all that happens, and I'm now confused why. So he caught me off guard very early on in my weapons in my arsenal that I have got now. I would have been all over that well and truly. But at that point, I'm thinking in my head, what is this guy doing? He'll slow down. He's just being an idiot. But he was really, and what he did. So we had these gates, and he'd been through them, as I said, 12 times. But on this particular time, he decided to go around the outside of the outside gate. So now he's in all the dirty shit. He's in, and he's actually off the track. I then knew we were in the shit, because we're driving straight into Forest Elbow. We were going head on into the wall, the tyre wall. And we're probably, I don't know how fast we were going at that stage, felt fast, but it was probably 60 Ks, might have been more going downhill. He picked up speed in his little A45, CLA 45, so they're quite quick to take off. I was lucky, I grabbed the wheel and the traction control and ABS, but he'd had the front left wheel now was off the actual track and on the dirt. And all it did was, unfortunately, the car then went into the actual tyre wall, the barrier, which has got a big rubber, I think it's a conveyor belt. It's all painted with the Falcon tyres or whatever sign it was. Something like that, because it hit and we banged every panel down the whole right-hand side of the car. And it was, I know it was Falcon tyre one because it was bloody left all this greeny blue paint all over the side of a silver car. So I pulled up. No one saw it. The other cars, because we were all in line, but because he took off, he got this bit of a gap. And no one saw that we actually hit the wall. I pulled over, and I think it was D-Russ that was behind me. So David Russell was behind us, and he because I got out of the car, we stopped the car, and I got out of the car, and I got this guy to get out of the bloody car, and he wanted to get out and take a photo of the car to see what he'd done. You know, he was laughing and thinking this is a big joke, and all I wanted to do was punch this guy fair square in the face because he was just fucking, and I nearly did. I grabbed him like this and threw him. I said, "Get in the bloody car." And D-Russ is the instructor behind, and he's going, "What the hell are you doing? What's going on?" Anyway, so I drove the car down and I dropped them off and quickly went around because it was on the driver's side. Like no one could see when I was going down pit lane that had been smashed in, luckily. And I took it around the back and I'm on the radio to the guys and I said, "We've just stacked the car and shit at the fan." And Hackett was really good. So Peter Hackett was our main instructor, and we had to go and get the guy. They had to go, and safety guys had to check them out because we'd had a crash and make sure they were okay. It was low impact, there was no problems, but and then we went up to the track and I had to explain to Hackett what actually happened, and to Lincoln, who was my boss, the leader of that exercise. And you can see the tyre marks, and Hackett goes, "You're lucky you did what you did, Cookie, otherwise you would have written the car off the airbag. You would have gone straight in. Airbags would have gone up. If you hadn't grabbed the wheel and just..." At that point, they thought the car was a write-off anyway because every panel was done, and on those CLA, the back quarter is the whole bloody back roof line. But it wasn't. They ended up fixing it, and I think the guy got kicked out because his attitude. I'm not sure. I can't remember that for exact, but these guys' attitude, even when Hackett and Lincoln, because I had to point out who it was, and he was having lunch, and they dragged him out, and they dragged the passenger out, and the passenger was good. He actually backed my story up and said, Cookie did everything he could. We weren't expecting it. This guy just did what he did, and the guy was really quite, so who cares? Not my car. I don't give a shit, and that's what pisses me off about dealer days, that the people don't respect the cars, or manufacturer days, and people don't respect the cars, and that pisses me off because that's not what I do. I would respect, even when I'm working for any manufacturer, I respect their cars, so I don't do stupid shit in them like some of the other people do. But and I thought that day I was done. I thought, because other people had crashed cars. Look, it's not us instructors have never crashed a car from driving. But when you are in the passenger seat, you are responsible for that car. So if you cock up, if your driver hits and smashes, it's your fault. And I understand that, and I respect that. And I said to Hackett, I said to mate, look, I understand that this is my fault. If you want me to pack my bags and go home, or not instruct and just wash or do whatever, I fully understand. Whatever comes my way, I'm prepared to take it. And he was really good about it. He sort of said, "Nah, it wasn't your fault. You did really well," and it was good. Like Lincoln was good. He sort of taught me. A few of the senior guys came along and said, "Don't worry about it. We've all been sort of, whether they've been smashed, everybody's had a close call," and they taught me a lot and gave me a lot of tools in my tool belt that I'll be able to reflect back on nowadays. And if there's, I don't get into that position now. I don't trust anybody to get, with that old adage, you give it an inch, they take a mile. So yeah, I don't give that inch anymore. And you can still do it friendly, you can still do it so they're enjoying their day, but you've got to make sure that, number one, like what Hackett says and what you say and everybody, if the instructor is safe, the car is safe, then the driver or the customer is going to be safe. So the number one priority is for us to look after ourselves, and then everything else will work out. And so that was the biggest negative of my instructing career. Came very early on, and I thought it was going to be over before it started, but it didn't, and it's taught me some fantastic lessons, and I've been able to grow from that and pass on a lot of stuff that, from that I learned from the older, more experienced, well, not so much older, but more experienced guys around.
One of the things that's a bit different to some of the other people in our team is the experience that you've had prior to driver training, not your racing experience there, but more of your professional experience. And it comes in a number of facets. You've been basically an AFL umpire. You've also built up a successful business. Give us a bit of an idea on what Cookie was about before you got into driver training.
Well, as I said, like, I always wanted to race cars and go-karts and shit like that. And even though we did look into it, we just didn't have the money or the backing to do it. So I put my effort into footy and cricket, like a lot of young Aussie boys did. That was, you played cricket in the summer and played footy in the winter, but my body didn't handle the football too well. So I was quite tall and skinny and got smashed up and knackered my back and stuff like that at an early age. So one of my neighbours was an umpire. He used to be a VFL back in those days, before AFL was around, VFL boundary umpire, and he took over coaching the Dandenong District junior football team. And he said, why don't you come out, because I was running the boundary for my brother's footy team. And they said, I think I was making $5 a game or something like that. It was just something to do because I was there. And they'll need, it's like at any of these sports, even today, they still need, support. So he said, why don't you come down and do it properly and get paid a whole lot more for it? So I did, and I became very good. I was good again. I think that's where I got the ability to coach and teach. One of my teachers said that one day you will be a teacher. He said, you've got a very good ability to, you understand the dynamics of whatever you are doing very quickly, and you sum people up. You have the ability to work somebody out very quickly and relate to them. So I remember, I started umpiring football. I did very, very well at that. Got into it was still the VFL seniors, but which is now like the AFL. And my last game, I got a bit disillusioned with the actual sport. I was 19 when I was into the AFL or VFL, and my last game was North Melbourne versus St Kilda at Waverley. So the Waverley doesn't even exist anymore. So it was VFL Park at Waverley, and not really. I was just disillusioned that the umpiring for coaches wanted us to be more flamboyant, and like they wanted me to change my running style because I was too fast. It didn't look like I was fast. I was beating the boundary umpires who was going like this, and I could pass them doing that. And I thought that's not what we're here for. We're supposed to be, our umpires are supposed to be heard but not seen. We're supposed to just, the game isn't about umpires, the game is about players and football. We're there just to adjudicate. And so if no one sees us or they can't, that's good. That's what I was always told and brought up, but they changed it and it just wasn't. And I don't like the game anymore. The game is too confusing. You need to be a psychologist to work out what the player's intent was. And I used to argue that, why do I have to know what their intent, if their intent was for the ball, or is their intent to go out and have a beer? I don't know, I don't care. I just know he's pushed him in the back. So, I argued with that and I just didn't like it. Plus I was going out with Jules at that time, so there was more interest in the skirt than there was in the football. And so I left that. And then we started to, and my business, or with my parents, we bought this new business which was called Electromold, and it was surface coating. So we just used to do nickel plating at that point in time, and over the 25-year journey that we had that, I ended up buying my parents out, and it was family business. I bought my brother out, and I ended up developing the business to be the largest aerospace and defence surface coating processing house in the Southern Hemisphere. And we used to do a lot of work for Boeing, Lockheed Martin, so all on their Raptor, their F-35 program. We were the only Australian supply processing house in the Southern Hemisphere that could work on the F-35 program. So we did a lot of work on their bombs and on their, we call it cockpit airframe components. So every manufacturer in Australia that actually made a component for either Boeing or Lockheed, they could not send it to the US in a raw state, whether it be aluminium, titanium, or these special stainless steel. So they would have to have them coated and finished. So I would crack test them, anodize them, prime, paint, all these different processes to them so that the part was finished and it would go to Boeing or Lockheed and they would assemble it onto their aircraft. So now when I get on a plane, I'll look into the wings, when all the flaps come up and I can see all the ailerons. I can probably name part numbers for half the stuff that's on the Boeing aircraft that we used to do here in Australia. So it was pretty good. A lot of hard work. Ran the business for 25 years. In the last 5-6 years, I probably worked harder, longer, for less money than I did in the first 20 years. I spent millions and millions of dollars to get the business approved so we could do the Lockheed and the Boeing work. Employed up to 36 staff at our peak. Did very well. I was lucky in 2013 I was bought out by one of my largest customers, and they gave me the golden handshake, and from going to be having a a handover of 12 months, was brought into 6 months, then 3 months, and they said, look, you're running this place. I had a CEO that was running it, and I had all these managers that were running, quality managers and general engineers and all this sort of stuff that used to run, and I spent a lot of time in the US at Boeing and Lockheed learning and training. I was one of the highest level NDT technicians in the country, trained from Lockheed and Boeing. I could do aircraft engine components, do all sorts of stuff. All that now is gone. I've lost all that now, but it was pretty intense what we used to do, and it was a great business. Nearly lost my house 3 times. You look back at it and the stress level, I think my wife said the day I sold the business, I probably gained back about 10 years. I said it was probably 20 years. So, the stress level of trying to find, $50,000 a week in wages was quite intense. When the GFC hit, we were running through there. I lost overnight $1.5 million off my bottom line because businesses went broke or they went offshore. It was some character building days. I learned a lot from it. I don't regret a single day of doing it. And I probably wouldn't do it any differently. You would, because now if you know what you know now, back then, you'd do things totally different. And I enjoy helping some of my mates with their business requirements just from some of the stuff that I've learned, like what we do with driver training. You learn little bits and pieces, and if you can pass that on, knowledge is key. So if you can help people, I like helping people. So that was what I've learned through those 25 years is invaluable. And to be a success and come out of it the other side. One stage there, I can remember Jules and I didn't pay ourselves for 3 months. We just were living on our own life savings, but I made sure every one of my staff members got paid every cent that they deserved and every cent that they earned. And I had a great crew that backed me up and would get in the trenches, and they would because I think if you lead by example, your staff are your biggest asset, and they will just follow you into those trenches. And they did. They supported us magnificently, and without them, we would have been absolutely screwed. Sorry. And so that's another day. The interview that you could interview me for a lot. There's a lot of stories on those 25 years, but it was good. So after the 2013, we had to reinvent ourselves again. My wife and I had no idea. Within the first 3 months was great. It's like having annual, because after not having any, what was it, with the handover, it worked. They just gave me the check, I gave them the key, and ta-da, Jack. So it was like a light switch turning off. And that was a very difficult. After the first 3 months, it was great. As I said, it was like having a long service leave, which you never had. It was great. But then I started going crazy, drove my missus mad because I had nothing to do. And so, yeah, we had to reinvent ourselves again. And it was good. We threw all the balls away, weren't trying to juggle anything, and we just looked at it and, got into driving buses for a mate of mine that, so I do charter bus work when I'm not doing driver training, which I really, funnily enough, I enjoy driving kids around and people around in buses. I don't know why, but I just enjoy it. It's good fun and no stress. It's an easy job. I can make it look easy, so I don't know, maybe that's why. And working with brilliant people like yourself and all the instructors that we have has been, I wish I had done it years ago, to be honest. I could have done this job for my whole life and been around these type of people and that, but I'm making the most of it since 2013 and I'm not stopping anytime soon, so it's good.
Fantastic, mate. Now, what other things off track keep you occupied? So you've mentioned your professional side off track, but are there any other hobbies and skills you've got?
I wish I was musical. I'm not musical at all. I like to think that I could sing a little bit, but the cats join in, so maybe I'm not really that way inclined at all. No, it's funny. I like music, but I don't listen to it a lot either. But I really do admire people that can sing and play the guitar and do that. I'm jealous of those people because that's something that I would really like to. And I did try when I did actually sell the business. I tried to take up the guitar, but I just couldn't get it. My brain just wasn't working. My fingers couldn't work, and I didn't put enough time in. I think it's something that you have to maybe, when you're younger, start off earlier. But no, most of and I think a lot of parents would understand this when I was 29 when I had my first son, and a lot of my free time and hobby time was taken up by family time. I wouldn't work on weekends, even though I ran my own business and stuff. I worked a shitload of hours during the week, but weekends were sacrilege, and that was my family time. So I coached basketball for both the kids, and we did that for about 10 years. I never played basketball in my life, so I used to do all the football stuff. So how I used to coach was tell the guys, all right, run down the wing, get into the pockets. And they used to look at me and go, what the hell? We don't have wings and pockets on basketball. But it worked because a lot of the kids played footy too. So as the years went on, I started to get the right terminology. But initially, a lot of my stuff was all football orientated, coaching basketball. But it worked. We won heaps of premierships and we had some great times. So that was a great part of my life, was with the kids. We used to do a lot of wakeboarding and water skiing. I was into boats. I love boats. So we used to do a lot of that, and the kids became very good. I'm nothing special, but I can wakeboard pretty well. We bought those air chairs, the things that fly hover on the wings underneath the water and stuff. Bought one of those. I could do that all right. And love boating, love being on the water. So now we've moved to Macrae. I've joined the yacht club. I bought myself a little taipan, so a catamaran. It's a racing catamaran, so it's like a Ferrari on water. It's pretty quick. I haven't sailed it yet. The guy who I bought it off won the state titles last year and they came second in the nationals last year. So it's a good boat. It'll never go as fast again now I'm on it, but it's a good boat. I've got good pedigree. And just bought myself a kayak. So we're only about 500 metres from the water. So I want to start doing water stuff. So I love snorkeling. I love scuba diving. Not that I do much of that at all, but I just like being on the water. So that's my next phase. My hobby time of my life can really start now. So majority of the time, my life was taken up with family and work. As I said, like most of our customers and our people understand all that, because that's what you do as a parent, is you spend most of your time working your ass off to make a good living for your kids, and then any private time you get, you spend with your family and your kids. We used to go away a lot. The kids had a great life, they reckon, which is good. They've had plenty of good holidays around the world, which is fantastic. And now we're empty nesters, so my wife and I have got time to spend reuniting ourselves with each other, which has been a good challenge. And we're with caravan. We were in Australia last year for 6 months, and we want to do more of that. That was fantastic. So we didn't fight for 6 months in a caravan, so we're doing something all right. We fight more now at home when we've got a house than we did in the caravan.
Got any favourite book or movies, or even if you haven't got a particular movie, maybe a genre of movies?
Yeah, I read a lot of Matthew Riley books. I read all Matthew Riley books. I like that sort of that action adventure type of stuff. Any of his books are pretty good because they're fast paced. I like the fast paced type of books, and also Lee Child's book. So that Jack Reacher. I read all Jack Reacher ones. So again, I think I like his because he's just like this guy that stands up for against the bullies. I was bullied a lot as I was a kid because when we travelled around Australia a lot. I had, I think one year, I think I had 8 primary schools in my life. So I had a lot of schools and met a lot of bullies and learned how to fight and run. So I was a better runner than I was a fighter, trust me. But yeah, I had one good punch and that was it. If the guy was still standing, I was running. So I ran a lot. Yeah, I think I like the Jack Reacher books because he stands up for the underdogs and doesn't handle bullies very well. And I don't handle bullies very well either. As an adult now, if someone bullied, I will go on. So that's just a byproduct of what happens as a kid growing up. Yeah, there's heaps of good movies. There's a lot of shit on Netflix that I've been watching lately from this last lockdown period. So I've seen it. I can tell you there's a lot of shit stuff. A lot of good movies. Yeah, Denzel Washington. I like Denzel Washington. He always seems to make good sort of movies. Yeah, nothing really. I like all sorts of movies. Not into the vampires and the werewolf type of shit. More into the that like Gran Torino with Clint Eastwood. Things like that. Bit edgy sort of movies that have got. Again, I think it's when you look at that one, that's another underdog sticking up for. So maybe there's something in that. I don't know.
Yep. You should wear a cape.
You know.
So a lot of what you've been talking about in your life and the way you go about things now when you're interacting with others around you has been very motivational. You're quite a motivational sort of person in that regard, very positive. But to end the interview off, have you got a particular motivational statement that you sort of draw upon regularly or like to share regularly and share it with us?
Yeah, I tell my kids to be the best that you can be. So not to really compete with anybody else, but just to be the best. So if I remember the kids, I said, if you're going to go get a job at a race team, and I obviously get back into that again, and if you're going to, and the first job they give you is to scrape the bloody pickup off the tyres. Well, just be the best bloody pickup scraper that they've ever seen in their life. And then they're going to look at you and say, shit, you do a good job of that. Okay, we want you to come and clean the windshield now and just be the best windshield cleaner that you can be. And then you just absolutely, that just gains momentum and you'll do all right from it. And the kids have done that. And that's what they throw that line back at me every now and then. Dad, just be the best you can be. So, yeah, that's my catchphrase. So I just try to be the best that I can be at whatever I do. And sure, it might not be as best that you can do or the best somebody else does, but it's the best I'm doing.
Fantastic. Great way to finish it, mate. And certainly an appropriate way to think of life too. Just compete against yourself and you'll always be the best.
And what I really like about the Evolve stuff is that we aren't brand focused, which is one of our many other jobs that we do, and you have to be brand focused, and I understand that. But what I like about this beautiful brand here is that we're getting onto the personal level. We're coaching people. We're teaching people how to drive, and they can cross a lot of the stuff that we teach them onto the roads, and we've had people that have said, that stuff that you've taught me, they've come back, that saved me the other day. I counter-steered, or I did this, I did that, whatever it was, I worked the brakes, so I'm looking ahead more. That's just on the road. And then when you have, we have lucky that we get the ability sometimes to have people come along to a manufacturer day, and then they see us and they want to do it more because they enjoy it. When we're working at the manufacturer day, we put our heart and soul into those days as well. Then all of a sudden they come to the Evolve day, like Chris and his son, they bring their whole family down. And now, so he's driving a Merc, and the son, he wants you to coach his son. And then you've got this now family affair that you not only are you coaching the father, then you coach the son. You've taken the wife for hot laps and talk like that. And now they're looking at buying a car to actually have track day cars and all the rest of it. And you can help them with that. And they're looking at buying, a different car. So it just keeps evolving. And that's why I like this type of coaching, because it's not just, you don't have them for 3 minutes and you're not just hanging around a couple of laps and say, here you go, you like that A45, beautiful coming. Now you really delve into their personalities and you can make a difference. And that's what I like doing. It was a shit car.
I remember those Renaults with the 3 wheel nuts on them, and I used to think, that looks so flimsy and shit. And then one day I thought, that's brilliant. For a pit stop, you've only got to do 3 wheel nuts. It's so much better. For a pit stop.
3 wheel nuts. Yeah, well, if you're raced and you're really good, you take one of them off anyway, so now you've got 2 wheel nuts, so it's even quicker again.
It's funny that lady you talked about at Bathurst, I remember that you came up to me after the first session and said, look, she's really, really cautious and she's really tentative, and she wasn't due to have an instructor in the next session. You were allocated to someone else during that time, and I was free. So I said, I'll jump in with her and just give her that extra bit of instruction. And I did that with the information you'd given me about how tentative and cautious she was. Fuck, she went nuts, man. She was like fired. She was pushing hard. And I'm like, this is conservative for cooking? What's going on? But she had actually already gotten her mojo going a bit. And it surprised me because I was expecting a pretty lazy ride, and she went hard. So, yeah, good on her.
She already had some of the cookie love, mate, so she was ready to roll.
When you were talking about all of about driving well and trying to be as perfect as possible whenever you drive all those different things, whether it be a car, a bus, a motorbike, or whatever it is that you're driving, you did leave out the shopping cart, because even when I'm pushing a shopping cart around the shopping centre, I'm always trying to hit the 8. You know how they're kind of weighted differently when you come up, and you try to make sure you turn early enough to get it to just tip into the corner at the right time. And it encompasses our entire life in every aspect of it. We're always thinking about that performance and that little nth degree to get the perfection in making a vehicle, whatever shape or size of vehicle that is. We're trying to get it to be as perfect as we can. It's a bit of a sad disease, isn't it?
It is. My wife she shakes her head, because when I find one of those shopping trolleys that's not quite weighted, I use my motorbike techniques and get over and lean across to help the actual get on the side of it. The shopping trolley can get around. So I haven't quite got my knee on the ground yet as I'm going around the corner with the shopping trolley, but I'm close. But one thing you can actually tell with people that push shopping trolleys, and they're all over, they just walk everywhere, they just stop it. That's how they drive. I can guarantee you they drive as stupidly on the road as they do with their bloody shopping trolleys.
Absolutely. Watch out for them. A couple of examples. I've got one that's, we had a group from out at Calder Park with us one day to do a defensive driving course. And they booked a bus to drive them all from your lawn, which is down, like Lakes Entrance Way or whatever. They arrived on this bus. We had picked up 3 rental cars from around the corner at the airport, went to Calder Park. There's myself, Jamie Whincup, and at the time, the former Australian Formula 3 champion, James Manderson, looking after this group. We knew straight away they were going to be rowdy. We said, look, guys, you've got to keep your head screwed on, listen to what we say, don't mess around. But you know what? It didn't take long, and they were messing around. And not long after lunch, we said, right, that's it, all done. You're not listening, you're not willing to be on board with this, so it's packing up. See you later. There's your bus. Go home. And we kicked them out early. It was meant to run till about 4 o'clock, and it was only about 2 o'clock we kicked them out. So we packed up, and then there was 3 racing drivers with 3 rental cars at Calder Park. So we had a couple of hours up our sleeve, and we ended up just fanging around. We did some of the best stunt driving that day. It was so much fun. And we took these shagged out rental cars back to Hertz or wherever it was, and just quickly hit them down the back. Yeah, sure, it's a pretty horrible scenario to have to be involved in, but it's also something like you've done. It is something you can learn from. And the other beauty of that is twofold. One is that as a lead instructor or a business owner, in my case, I back you guys 100%. If you feel the first level of something being a little bit unsafe, pull it in, control it immediately. I'll back you. If the driver thinks, no, I had it all under control, I'll be like, no, you didn't. If my instructor suggests you didn't, they're the ones with the experience, not you, and I'll back my instructor 100%. If that means that person doesn't come back, or if that means they haven't had the best day possible in their mind, then that's fine with me, because I know that the right call has been made by my instructor. Second to that is that you did learn from the experience, and that learning came from that experience itself, but also from the team around you. And I'm really encourage my team to work with each other and be a team where we can learn from each other, because there are different levels of experience in the group. And it doesn't mean that it needs to be a critical situation we're learning from, even just simply the normal, coaching situations. We can learn from each other with the amount of experience we've got in the team. It's silly to not utilize that. So it's great that you were able to use that as a learning experience and grow from it. And you have grown immensely. You've, from an instructing perspective, I saw you back then, and I have seen the growth that you've made since then as an instructor, and it is significant. And certainly now you're one of the key instructors in the team based on that. You've taken that on and not just been blasé about it. You've really grown with it. So well done on your ability to turn a negative into a positive. Huh?
Now, thanks. And it's been good with when you said that you back us up. Some of the other people we work for, that doesn't happen. And I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but the other instructors will know some of the ones I'm talking about, how they leave you to hang you out to dry and they don't support you. Their number one isn't supporting the instructor, whereas I have seen firsthand you have done that, stepped up, and we've got rid of people, we've kicked people out, or you've trusted, an instructor comes in and says this person shouldn't be on the track, and you've stood up, so you walk the walk, which is good from our perspective, because we know that you've got our back, and that's really important. When some of the others, you go along and they go, shit, is he going to have our back? Are we gone? Because it's all about the almighty dollar, because it's a brand day. It's not what we do. 99 times out of 100, we all talk shit to each other, and we all might say, but it's that 1% when we're talking that they can make a massive difference to us. And that's where we learn from, is from our other instructors, because you can read stuff and you can do stuff, but it's the boys and the girls like Chelsea and that, even though she's only a young chick, but she can still got a wealth of experience where they can come along and they can tell you, try this. And I like passing that on. I'm trying to be a bit more of a mentor to our guys and girls. And, they come along. I know some of the, they said, I'm having trouble getting through with this guy. And you can relate to that. So you then pass on what you've learned from the other people and say, oh, well, Ricky, have you tried this? Or maybe use this word instead. And it can only, sometimes it's a word. So somebody told me, like I used to say, break, break, break. And I said, well, don't use break, break, break. Use break and then go harder, harder, push, push. Because people go, well, I am on the brake. I am braking. So break, break, break. Well, he's asking me to brake. I am on the brake. But if you say brake and then go harder, push harder, they understand. And that has made so it's just couple of words have made a massive difference to my coaching. And I pass that on to people. So without the team around us, including yourself, it would be a different game.